Before the season, I had heard some real rumblings that if Fox were to leave, Texas would be the place he'd want to go. And here we are, 1 week from the deadline, Tom, and this is becoming a thing. What type of package do you think the Kings should be looking for here? Should they be looking for picks, players? What path should they be going?
The Donovan Mitchell package. That's the asking price. Donovan Mitchell.
Ton of picks. But
don't forget, they got Markkanen. They got Sexton, who was coming. He just signed an extension, and he was 24 years old at the time of the deal. Now we look back at the Sexton acquisition and not as a piece, but he was a young piece along with Markkanen. And they got the 2022 first-round pick, Agbaji, who was just drafted. So they got 3 firsts unprotected, 2 pick swaps, and Agbaji that was already it was basically effectively another first-round pick.
Think about Tom. That. That's a lot.
3 young players, 3 firsts, and 2 pick swaps. Now, that's the asking price. That's the benchmark for De'Aaron Fox. If you're Sacramento Kings, you say, look, a great young player, an all-star who is the clutch player of the year. He has under contract for next season. What is my incentive to move him right now? You're going to have to come in with multiple first-round picks, at least 3 first-round picks, and a young player to build around. And that's where things get really interesting. If you're the San Antonio Spurs and you have the opportunity to go get De'Aaron Fox, you obviously want to pair Victor Wembanyama with another star for this very reason we talked about last week. For the next 3 years, Victor Wembanyama is going to be paid $14 million on average. This season, the season after that, and the season after that. If you acquire De'Aaron Fox, you are getting an all-star caliber player who plays downhill in the way that you're so desperately needing a guy to go downhill in drives. He's one of the top drivers in the NBA. The San Antonio Spurs are a bottom 5 driving team. De'Aaron Fox has family, ties to Texas, like you laid out. This seems like a seamless fit. Sacramento gets on the phone and says, all right, Steph Castle coming our way and a couple first-round picks. And you're the Spurs, and you're like, no, that's not going to happen. We're not going to put Stephen Castle into the deal.
No, I'm not giving you Castle.
What's it going to take? No. What's it going to take? In order to salary match, you're going to have to put...
I'm not giving Castle. Castle's a non-starter for me. I'm not giving him. I will not give him up on a Fox deal.
But if you're Sacramento, that's the price that it's going to take. You look at benchmark deals of all-star players in their prime. And granted, De'Aaron Fox has only been to 1 all-star. Donovan Mitchell was 3-time all-star. And Donovan Mitchell was 2 years younger than what Fox is right now. So
and more
he's
playoff
also
success
under
for
contract.
Mitchell, too. More playoff success and experience on Mitchell's side, too. And a better player.
A better player. I think objectively a better player at the time of the deal than what De'Aaron Fox is now. So if you lower that asking price, you're like, all right, not 3 firsts and 2 swaps and 3 young players. It lowers the bar a little bit. But for San Antonio, if the deal is Zach Collins and Keldon Johnson and 5 first-round picks, I don't think Sacramento says no to that, but it's going to have to be that caliber of package because the San Antonio Spurs aren't going to put Castle in a deal. Do they put Devin Vassell into a deal? Because I think you want Vassell around Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. What does the trade package look like, KOC? Because if Donovan Mitchell got that package and you're working off of that template, it's going to be very hard to find a one-in-one deal here between the San Antonio Spurs and the Sacramento Kings.
That's why I think a 3-way deal could make some sense. I put out an idea on X earlier in the week. It was a 3-way, including, Utah, coincidentally, sending John Collins and Colin Sexton to the Kings. And it's part of a 3-way deal. And that some of those San Antonio salaries you're alluding to would then instead go to Utah, with picks going to the Kings, picks going to the Jazz, Fox going to the Spurs. Now, some Kings fans loved it. A lot of Kings fans tried to rip my head off, and they hated me for it. A lot of Jazz fans liked it. Some were like, we don't want these salaries. Spurs fans all seem to really like it. I think the Kings would probably get more than I put in that deal over on X, but ultimately, I think for the Kings, I don't love the Spurs players on my team unless it's Castle. Unless it's Vassell, and even with Vassell, it's been kind of a down year for him. after, entering the season a bit late due to injury. I like Vassell a lot. But if I'm the Kings, I'd rather the heavy pick space package, even if it means not getting the player incentives like you're talking about with like Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton going to the Jazz in that Mitchell deal. Ultimately, though, the Kings are obviously under some pressure here. They have a player who hasn't explicitly, demanded a trade, but clearly they don't feel confident he wants to be there long term. That's why they're having these discussions. But they also have time, like you alluded to. He has another year in his deal. They could play this out. The team's been playing really well lately. Maybe they go into the playoffs and they win a round and Fox loves it there and he wants to re-sign and woo, everything's happy and good this summer. That's the scenario the Spurs need to be afraid of here, because the Spurs, it's San Antonio. It's not a big market. It's not a place that stars really ever want to go. And they have an opportunity to go get a top player who wants to be there. And this is the window. Like when will there be an opportunity again to get a star who wants to be on your team and a star that becomes available? Like I just look around the market, like who's the next guy? Like you can dream about Anthony Edwards. You can dream about some of these guys for years from now, but there's no guarantee that guy's ever going to become available. And if he does become available, it might not be in a situation where it makes sense for you to put the best offer on the table. So the Spurs are definitely under pressure to make Victor Wembanyama happy, to try to maximize what this team can be when he's on that rookie deal. And Fox might be the best shot that they can take. So they're under pressure here as well to get something done.
Well, like KOC, think about it this way. The Wemby contract is going to pay him max Strus money going forward over the next 2.5 years. You have an opportunity to get De'Aaron Fox and Wemby for what the Utah Jazz are paying Lauri Markkanen over the next 2 years. Their combined salary is going to be about $50 million. So you get De'Aaron Fox and Wemby for basically what like a max guy is. You basically get 2 max guys for the price of 1. So if you're San Antonio, you're incentivized to go get a guy right now. I would say, KOC, it might be a little bit different than like, hey, who wants to go to San Antonio? I think it might be, hey, who doesn't want to go play with Wemby? Like Wemby is such an attractive guy that like I could see guys being like, all right, if I can play with that guy, I will go play on Mars to play with that guy, right? Like I think that De'Aaron Fox, while it is is that
his homeland, Tom? Do you know something we don't? Is Mars his homeland?
Wait,
one of those starships?
Sources tell me. So I think when you look at this situation, the San Antonio Spurs have to strike with a star, and maybe Giannis comes available, or it's a situation where, hey, who thought that they would sign up to go play in Milwaukee? Well, Damian Lillard got traded there and seems to be fairly happy playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo. So if you're the Spurs, you're trying to see, am I going to keep my powder keg dry for a star like that? Is there another guy who's going to be better than De'Aaron Fox who comes down and becomes available in the next year or so? That's tough. It's hard to project into the future, but the fit, it's a seamless fit with Victor Wembanyama. You need a guy, a high usage guy who plays downhill, who's not necessarily a natural playmaker, but when you have someone that talented in Victor Wembanyama, you don't need a Chris Paul, a prime Chris Paul to be your facilitator. You can play through Victor Wembanyama in ways that De'Aaron Fox, if he doesn't have to be a high usage guy on your team. I like the deal for the Spurs. It's just coming together on what De'Aaron Fox is worth to the Sacramento Kings. And lastly on this, Sacramento Kings are sending their first round pick this year to Atlanta if it's not falling within the top 12. Is there a chance that the Sacramento Kings are more willing to take the pick package instead of getting a young contributing piece? Because, hey, if you're trading De'Aaron Fox, is it time to play for that, retaining the Sacramento pick that could be Cooper Flagg if things break right?
Well, that'd be my path if I'm the Kings. I would love to retain that pick if I'm the Kings. Right now, it has the 12th best odds currently, and they are only 2.5 back from the Spurs for the 10th best odds, and then they're only 4.5 back from the Sixers for the 8th best odds. So they're not far off from having top 10 odds, which is a quarter of a chance to move into the top 4. And we'll talk in a minute about some teams that, should or shouldn't tank. But one last thought on the Spurs, Tom. The idea of getting Fox, for regardless of what if it's a fair price, if it's not that Mitchell package, something a little bit less, they'd still have a lot of leftover assets to go get a third guy. And having Fox with Victor makes you more appealing to those guys who want to win a championship regardless of where it is. But if it's just Victor, I mean, this team is not a top 6 seed. They have really struggled as of late. Victor, as great as he is still very up and down as a young player, in part because of the supporting cast being so weak. If you have Fox, a proven high-level point guard, and Victor Wembanyama on the ascent, it makes your team, your franchise, all the more appealing. So that's also what I think the Spurs would be getting with De'Aaron Fox in a deal, is looking like something that's worth going to. Right now, it's just the idea of Victor. And Fox sees that on top of it being home for him.